Recently, there has been a public, or I should I say, a death of a celebrity that has sparked a conversation about gun violence within the Black community. Um, this celebrity was Takeoff from the Migos, and it was reported that he was shot and killed or at a dice game, or that's at least what the reports are saying in Houston, Texas. And I've seen a lot of discourse about gun violence in our community, and particularly people tend to point to rap culture and basically blaming rap culture is the reason why we have gun violence. I took time out of my day and night to record some minis breaking down gun violence in general, because it was part of my research when I was finishing my doctorate. And the question we pose today is, how do you all feel about gun violence within the Black community? So I've done my TikToks, so I would like for the aunties to respond to that question, and as well as our audience. We need to have an honest conversation about gun violence. And lately, there's been a big conversation about gun violence. Well, should I say misinformation about gun violence? First, I break down the gun violence both within our community and the white community. Now, typically, in the white community, white men use firearms for suicide versus Black men tend to use firearms for homicide. The United States tends to romanticize gun culture or gun violence, aggression, and anything dealing with rage and anger through our media, through our sports, through our entertainment. On top of that, we also pass laws, like through the legislative process, by promoting self-defense and having more access to guns. Men are typically more likely to kill with firearm versus women. Now, that does not mean that women don't kill or even own firearms. It's just not a method that we prefer. But when we go a little bit deeper into this, when it comes to gun violence and how it got started, even though people target rap culture, people forget about redlining and discrimination back in the 60s and how gang violence began to happen. And when that happened, we created something called the street code. Now, every Black person in every socioeconomic group understands street code. And that street code was created so that way Black people could protect themselves from their white oppressors and also within their community.
First of all, your TikToks were dope, Auntie Keish. I thoroughly enjoyed those and learned a lot myself. Um, when it comes to gun violence in the Black community, I kind of look at it the same way I look at when people say we need to deal with Black on Black crime. It's like, this is not a thing. Gun violence happens in every community. Gun violence happens across the spectrum. And when you did your TikToks, I love that you went back to like the whole root of it all, especially in this country. Like, this America is a very gun loving country, regardless. So I'm just like, do we as a Black community need to talk about it? Oh, we absolutely do. But in the grand scheme of things, we are still a minority, and that's not all there is to our community. Like, it's just not it. So I kind of struggle when it comes to, what do you think about gun violence in the Black community? I think it's gun violence in every community. That's what I think.
I think that there's gun violence in every community, absolutely. But that's also a question. What do you think about gun violence in the Black community? That's like Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. That's what that says to me. And the reason why it says that is because we don't talk about gun violence in the Black community. And I think we like to say, we're the Black community. We lift each other up. We have all these things that make us proud. We had everything stripped away from us, our language, our love for each other, our family structures. But then we have gun violence, and it's not against other people, it's against each other. And that's it. I think it's disheartening for me. It pisses me off, because how do you say you love your people, but you fight and you kill your people? Yes, every community fights and kills their people, but we're talking about our community.
I can see that. I can see how me saying all communities have violence in their community comes off as like all lives matter. But I guess I'm struggling because I'm like, well, this one works in our favor though. Like the reason why All Lives Matter sucked is because we know all lives matter and we want people to care about our lives. And yes, we need to care about our own lives too, which is why we need the conversation about gun violence. But I feel like that conversation does happen. People don't like to pay attention to positive things because a lot of rappers have gone on platforms and have these conversations. A lot of politicians, Black politicians, have had these conversations. There have been conferences on these. There are community groups that talk about gun violence, but we just don't pay attention to the good things. We only pay attention to the negative.
And I think that's the reason why there's not a lot of conversation about it. Like the only time that I see people really trying to push conversation on gun violence, even within my family, is when something happens and someone's killed by a gun. Other than that, there is no conversation about it other times. It's for that moment, like, oh, Takeoff was shot and killed. Takeoff was murdered. Gun violence is ridiculous. And people are like going ham talking about it. But then in about 2 to 3 weeks, you won't hear much about it. I won't hear much from my family and friends about it. And then when it happens again, that's when the conversation starts again. It needs to be a consistent conversation. And I'm not saying that there aren't people in the community that aren't talking about it and pushing for it. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying on a micro level, within our families, with our friends, it's just not a conversation unless something big happens that brings it up.
So y'all ain't gonna like me for this, but I don't care. I don't care. I'm standing 10 toes down on it. No, I'm kidding. It's an issue with our Black men. Black women listen to the same music and are not going around shooting each other. On top of that, Black women, they did an article that Black women's gun ownership went up after George Floyd was killed and Ahmaud Arbery. Guess who's still not shooting up their community?
But are we saying that Black men are shooting up their community because of the music that they listen to?
Nope. I'm saying that it is an issue with our men. Full stop. I don't care what they try to tell me. It is a full issue with our men. Full stop.
So based on your research, why do Black men resort to that? Like, I know you did a TikTok mini on that, but also like bringing it up here would be really helpful for people to understand what you're saying too.
So when I did the TikTok, before I did the TikTok, I went on, my first TikTok was about what I put on Twitter. So I did a whole thread on Twitter that broke down how we mold men, how we identify men. Men are identified as these aggressive, hunter, protector, alpha, hard, all these terms that we are molding men to be. And then we put them, now our men, I'm going to go with our men this time. We put them in these areas where they are impoverished, lack of resources. And we all know that communities that lack resources creates poverty. Poverty then stems to crime. So you got all these Black men who are fighting the system. And then now the system is like, well, we don't care about y'all and y'all ain't gonna get on this social hierarchy because we know who's at the top of the hierarchy. And those men will do whatever it takes to keep everybody else below them. And that includes Black men. So now you got these men, Black men, fighting each other, trying to get to the top, which is what we call street code. Street code was both used for outside of the community, for the oppressors, and within the community. And every single Black person on this earth, no matter what their social economic status is, knows what street code is. They know that. And that has been an ongoing issue since the 60s, since the government set us up in these impoverished places, not allowing Black people to have the opportunities that they have. So I think it literally put our men in a bad situation. And instead of us being like, okay, how do we work together to move forward? They're fighting each other to try to reach the top. And I think that is what's killing them, honestly. And they don't see that the patriarchy is not built for them. It's built for another class, but they think it is because they're men. Well, what do men do anyway? They're aggressive, they're violent, they're angry. That's not all men. Before everybody get on me, that's not all men. But overall, if we look at the numbers, men are typically more violent. Men typically use more guns, fatal weapons. And then we have our men who are not only impoverished, but also in this group of, let's just say, violence, in this group, and they battling against incarceration, lack of health care, racism, discrimination. They're battling it all. And nobody's there to be like, okay, let me help you. Let me make sure the community is moving forward like it should be. And we're not doing that. They're not doing that. And I don't know what the answer is. What I do know is that rap culture and rap lyrics is just the tip of the iceberg. We got to go a lot deeper than that. That's just what I know and what research supports.
And also rap lyrics and rap culture is a way out, right? A lot of people are getting famous and they're getting money because it's based on rap culture and rap lyrics. People are using their talent to get out. People are using their basketball, football. A lot of our Black men don't get famous or don't get rich just because they went and they got this, Harvard law degree or whatever elite law degree. A lot of it is because of talent. A lot of Black people get famous because of their bodies, sports. But one thing we don't talk about with street code, and nobody ever wants to talk about it, and it pisses me off every single time, is drugs. And that's the reason why gun violence is up, and it's because of drugs. Because you get people who sell drugs because they got to make it. That's the only way they can see that their family can get money. And you get a lot of people that uphold it and be like, you know what, I understand why they do this. I understand why they do that. Well, with drugs comes gun violence.
Here's how I see it, Shug. I see it in another way. While I do agree, I think there's another, that saying that we always say, kill two birds with one stone, right? So if we killing one bird, rap lyrics, rap culture, how are we killing the other bird? The other bird is the Constitution. How we addressing the white men who come over to our communities and shoot up our grocery stores, shoot up our churches. You ain't killing the other bird. We can kill this bird. But this bird is still flying around saying, hey, this is my country. Because every time a manifesto is written, they ain't quoting Jeezy. They ain't quoting T.I. They're not quoting Drake. They're not quoting Rick Ross. They're not quoting Lil Wayne. And they damn for sure ain't quoting Kanye.
Nope.
In the manifestos, it say, this my country, you get out.
It's
and
true.
If you don't get out, don't worry, because I'm going to come over to your city and your community, and I'm going to shoot that bitch up.
And it's true. It happened in our city, in Buffalo. Yep. Buffalo got shot up. Somebody took a manifesto, drove right on down to Buffalo, and went to the black tops and shot up tops because of that. But this is another thing that pissed me off that does not get addressed, is that I heard somebody told me, this was an interesting conversation, Black people are more violent. I said, how? Explain to me how Black people are more violent. Literally. And me, I don't have a problem with white folks, but I do have a problem with that rhetoric, because that's what was taught in their schools. Is how are we more violent? Hawaiians, you can't even go to Hawaii. You're howly because you're without breath, because you don't care about other people, because you have taken over an island. Mexico is literally shrunk down, and Texas is bigger because you have taken over Texas. You've taken over Africa. They've taken over every single country that they touch. There's people on reservations that don't belong on reservations because white people are violent, but people like to say Black people are more violent. My problem with the violence in the Black community is that we know that they're going to say we're more violent. We know that the system is rigged to make us more violent. We know that they're like, you know what, give them guns, stand back and watch them kill each other. We already know that they're gonna say that. Why do we do it? That's why I got a gun. I'm not walking around killing people.
I think it's an installation of fear. That's what I personally believe. And I said that on my Twitter, that bottom line is they at the top have known how to instill fear for the longest time. Just think about when it comes to politics, the elections is coming up. So what are the rhetoric that they use? Immigrants is coming over here to take your jobs. Yes, they are. Those are the people that's doing it. So now we set up ourselves to be like, oh, now I gotta fear this person. This person's gonna come get this and come get that. So you have whole communities walking around in fear of something that a person put in psychologically that's not even happening. So we are operating off something that's not real. Literally, I think on Ashley's TikTok, there was a man who responded and said, I'm glad I have my guns because just in case of an invasion. We ain't been invaded since 1942. I heard up. I was like, wait a minute, we ain't been invaded since Pearl Harbor, right? I said, let me get the.
She's like, when?
I was like, when? 1942 was the last time the U.S. was invaded. Again, we are operating off fear, and they know how to do that at the top. Now, before anybody get on me, because I know it's not about white community, right? And I had explained to them that they got a gun issue too, except the difference is white men use guns for suicide more. But and they're like, and I know people are probably
mass homicide.
Huh?
And mass homicide.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there was a girl who talked about mass shooters. Yes, we know that typically the profile of mass shooters are white, but that does not mean other people can't be mass shooters. And I made that very clear on my TikToks. But when it comes to how we look at their community and them suffering from gun violence, people don't know that they will sacrifice a few just to stay where they at. They will sacrifice a few to stay on that hierarchy. And if that means that you're going to kill yourself off, okay. Just long as we stay where we at, not affecting us, we getting all the money, we getting on staying in the social rank. Okay. That's what you want to do.
But why do we kill each other?
You're right. Why do we kill each other? I think it's, again, to me, an installation of fear. And they are going to do that. No, and I think that there's just this, I need to climb to the top ladder to be like them.
Yeah.
And they will sacrifice their own too.
I agree with that. Because even if you're talking about drugs in the community and dealing and all of that, there is still a hierarchy. And people are being killed because people need to maintain that hierarchy. So you're claiming a certain part of the community as your dealing area. You're trying to get out, right? So this is the only way that I can get out, that I can move up in the ranks. You're trying to become the boss. And so anybody that threatens that, and then let's say they threaten it and you already kind of have low self-esteem. So you're doing all this to put on a mask, a front that you're cool, that you're, strong, whatever. But somebody threatens you, like that's instant. So it is still a hierarchy within our community. And then them trying, like Auntie Keisha saying, trying to get up there when up there is just not even achievable at that point.
Yeah, I definitely think it all. I like Auntie Keish saying it all stems back to some type of fear, whether rational or irrational. Yeah. It's a fear. Even when it comes to drugs, as y'all were talking about, when you ask Auntie Shug, but it starts at drugs. I've always been of the mindset with drugs. They poured that into our community. Like we can sit here and say every community uses drugs, but we didn't have a boat, a plane, or nothing to get the drugs here. They poured that into our community because they knew it would destroy it. They knew it would cause violence. And they did that. And then people ask, well, why would we fall for it? Well, first of all, anybody can get hooked on drugs. Second, there's this for the drug dealer. Again, it stems back to fear. When you are in an impoverished area where you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you might say, what I got to do to get groceries in my house? What do I need to do? And we can sit here and go over and over. Well, do something right. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We talked about that before. They took the straps. We out here in sandals. We don't even start on the same playing field. So that fear of I got to make it out of this, or that fear of I got to feed my family, or just that fear of competition in America. America is based on capitalism and competition. That's where the crabs in a barrel mindset comes from. You got to pull somebody else down to get up because only one of us is allowed at the top at a time. Yeah. So if you think that way, of course you're going to try to pull the other people down. Of course I got to shoot you because if you here, I can't get here. So I got to take you out of the picture. So that's a mindset that's been kind of drilled into us because it's not where we come from. We come from a collectivist community, but we live in a country that teaches individualism.
I said the same thing. You cannot change a community without looking at the system the community is in. People cannot make better decisions. I mean, people making decisions is based off how well the system is running. And if this is the system that we got, what exactly do you think those decisions are going to be?
Mm-hmm. I agree with it to a certain extent, just because if I hold our community accountable, we're talking about systematic, right? We're talking about macro systems. The macro system is a little bit harder to get to if you don't even deal with the micro systems. So even within us, I know drug dealers who ain't never had to worry about where their next meal is coming from. And it makes me mad every time I see it, because I'm like, no, you had every jersey. You had every pair of shoes. Your mama was out here working. I know where she worked. She got a good job. You did it because you wanted to. And we do have that in our community too. So yeah, it was put into our community. I'm a whole victim of it. I remember. But at the same time, when do we say, okay. We were a collectivist community. I like that she said that. We were a collectivist community. How do we get back to that? Jobs everywhere. You can't get one. There's jobs at Burger King. There's lawns that need to be mowed. I teach my son right now. You know what? You want some money? Go out there and go mow these lawns. He mows a neighbor lawn. She give him $25. There's always money to be made than to kill your own people. And that's how I look at drugs. I look at it as you're peddling drugs to your own people. You are the demise of your own people. And then there's gun violence that's going to rise because of that. Is it all our fault? No. But they're still doing it.
I also think it's situational though, because it's not always peddling drugs to our people. They're also peddling drugs to other communities too. I mean, I had a client in my office the other day that was telling me that her white grandson was only doing drugs because he was hanging out with the poor Black people around the corner, right? And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. No, this kid was going there to get his drugs. So it's not always just within our community that we're pushing drugs, and all drug dealers are not going to use guns for violence. But the question that you're asking is like, why do we kill each other, or why do we use guns for violence? A lot of these people that have to, or that get into dealing drugs or whatever, there's a reason. It's not always because they want to, right? Even if their mom's working, even if they have all the things that they want or need, there's also another reason. Again, like I was saying, it could be a mask, right? Like, I have to look tough. I have to look like this, so ain't nobody gonna come up in here and mess with my mama, so she can keep working and giving me what she needs. So I have to protect myself. And what's a better way to do that than a gun? Like, they haven't learned any other better ways to protect themselves.
No, because 400 years ago, a white man said, this is what we got to do. Whether it was fighting the British or keeping the slaves from getting access, a white man told us, we're going to put the Second Amendment in. You have the right to bear arms. And we've been going with that shit since then. Since 400 years ago. And that's why I put those two cases up when it came to McDonald versus the city of Chicago and Columbus, Ohio, where I'm staying at right now, because there are activists on the ground right now trying to change those gun laws to make their safer communities. And every single time they've been voted against, because the Constitution told them 400 years ago, nope, you have a right to bear arms. You have a right to kill if you choose to, or self-defense. And we've been downhill ever since then.
Yep. And then as far as the collectivists, like, how do we get back to that? We did a show not too long ago where we asked the question, do you kick your kids out at 18? Well, here's where the collectivist mindset seemingly got broke. A collectivist mindset doesn't kick your kids out at 18, because if I'm an 18-year-old Black boy and I know upon my 18th birthday, my mom said I got to get out and take care of myself, I might not be able to think of any other way than to start selling drugs, because how am I going to pay rent off of a Burger King salary? That's not realistic. That's not realistic.
I have a hard time with that. I struggle with that because I don't believe it. And the reason why I don't believe it is because I ain't got to be an 18-year-old Black man that gets kicked out. Guess what? Somebody looked at me and told me at 18, I want you out of my house too. And I didn't say, well, time for me to start slinging rock. I didn't say, well, I got to go shoot somebody. I made shit happen. And that's what I'm saying.
But everybody's not as strong as you. Everybody doesn't think in the same way that you do.
Right.
You're not taught in that way.
You're right. You're right. But these are excuses. And so everybody is not as strong. That we have been kept down. There is a collectivist mentality that's gone out of our community, but you're talking about how to fix it. So if we say how to fix it, don't we talk about breaking generational curses? How do we break generational curses? That's what we need to go forward with, how to fix it, not how to justify it.
Well, let me put this out there. Let me put this out there for you, Shiv. The reason why I got so upset these last few weeks is because I'm watching our community follow behind their intellectual leaders who got money and billionaires, with no strategy and no plan. Yeah. What's the strategy and plan for these people that they following right now? Right. Oh, because they're billionaires. Oh, because they donated this money. What's the plan?
Mm-hmm. That's what I
Also,
believe.
making change, like that generational wealth, breaking those curses, that stuff takes time. That takes patience. You have a lot of people out here who are not patient enough to say, you know what, I'm just going to do the best that I can right now to set my child up to be better. And then their child gets there and they do a little bit better. And then you inch up as you go through the generations. Yep. People aren't patient enough like that. They're like, I want it right now. I need to get out of here right now. I'm going to do what I have to do to get out of here right now.
Because we've always lived in survival mode.
Right.
Survival mode, and they have a 400-year start. Of course, they ain't gonna be going around shooting up their neighborhoods. Why would they? Yep. They have the resources, and hell, they doing it anyway.
Right. So, and you gotta think, like as frustrating as it is, like earlier when you said, but we got to get down to the micro level. We can do that, and we can talk about breaking generational curses, but at the end of the day, we really can't separate the micro from the macro in the system, because there's still going to be a point where we up against something bigger, and that's this system. We're up against that no matter how much we try to fight against it. So yes, we can fix things at a micro level, but there's always going to be the underlying tone of y'all can only go so far.
Money is driving a lot of these decisions. We could be on a bigger platform to talk about these things, but guess what? They ain't listening to us because we don't got the money. And they don't want to listen to what we got to say. They want to listen to what that billionaire said and what that millionaire said because they got money and they're in the limelight and they have a bigger stage. Oh, so they must know what they're talking about because they only equate knowledge to money. When there are people literally like us on the ground doing this work, researching, talking to people like we're supposed to, but we're not going to be valuable because we don't have the money. Yep. That's another issue with our community. They fall right into the capitalistic mindset as well. If we don't have money, oh, well, I don't want to listen to those people. There's researchers and activists on the ground. We just talked about it. There's people fighting the courts right now, but those people ain't on stage. Nobody even knows about these court cases that happen, that people are fighting. Everyday
Them are the people right now that I'm like, those are the people that I want, because I don't like I don't like the justification. I know that there's justification for it. I understand the macro system. I like to hear it because I'm like, until you've been affected and like deeply affected, like I still bear scars from that because somebody was like, I just need to make some money. I guess it's you today. There's families literally broken up because of gun violence. You know what? I killed them because of street code. And so for me, I'm like, fix it. Fix it now at the macro level. We got to now, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're working on it at the macro level right now. So I'm not talking to us, but I'm talking about all the people who justifying this and I don't blame you. I'm talking about all the people who's like, you know what? Let's uphold this. Do something in front of me, I'm telling. Do something in front of me. Kill somebody in front of me, I'm telling. Do it. I dare you. I'm telling.
Well, there is a part of, like, I get what you're saying about justification, and I agree with that. I still also believe that you have to know why you're doing it in order to fix it. You have to know why it's happening in order to intervene and change it. Mm-hmm. So there are reasons why it's happening, and a lot of that has to do with mental health too, mindsets, perspective, things that we've been taught and we haven't been able to unlearn it. We're still rolling with things that we learned however many years ago. Right. So understanding what is your mindset? How do you think about gun violence? How do you think about, I don't know, success? Like, what do you think that looks like? If success to you is being the white man billionaire at the top, okay, then that's the problem, because that ain't where you're going. You might end up being the black billionaire, but you're going on a different path. Yeah. And so looking at it in that way, there's a different way for us to get there. You're not going to get there in the same way.
Yep. That's why I did this, Shug. You always ask the question of why. Why? And that was the reason why I felt the need to even do the TikTok, because I was like, why do we feel like we need to have guns? Why do we feel like we need to carry this around? And I said, well, first of all, that's the question people need to be answering. Why do people feel like they have to walk around with guns? Why? And then we relax the laws where now you can say, in the name of self-defense, which is the stand your ground law, and now you don't have, in Ohio at least, you don't have to carry. You don't have to have a permit to carry. Mm-hmm. And even law enforcement spoke out about that. They were not okay with that. Like, so there are people who are even firearm owners that didn't like that. And so we have to ask really ask our questions. Why are we walking around doing that when other countries are not getting their schools shot up?
Exactly. And you know what's funny? I have had this conversation with Elijah numerous times because Elijah, he likes guns. He's always liked guns.
I do too.
He loves guns. He loves to go to the range and go shooting. It's a stress reliever. I've gone to the range. Initially, I was afraid to shoot a gun, but it is a stress relief to do so. But even he, as a gun lover, is like, but they still need to make some stricter law. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm a law-abiding citizen, so I'll always be able to get a gun. But that doesn't mean everybody is supposed to have a gun. And he completely feels like there should be stricter gun laws. It's like, why wouldn't there be? Like, what are you saying to not try to help your country when we have the most mass shootings out of all the countries?
I mean, I get that, but a stricter gun law is going to stop all the like backdoor, black, whatever gun. Like,
Nope.
A lot of the people in the hood, they don't have licenses for their guns. They getting it from other places.
And
that's
that's always
will stop the mass production. It will stop them getting into everybody's hands. Slowly but surely, you can kind of start removing some stuff. Stricter gun laws could be, why do we need assault rifles? You don't need an assault rifle. I love guns, and you don't need an assault rifle. Because that's for what? Mass shootings. Military uses assault rifle. So if a military soldier needs an assault rifle, well, then why do you? You don't. You just need to be able to protect your house.
Yep. Nope, I agree with that. That makes sense.
Yeah. But that's always been my question too. Like, just because we make a criminal not following the law already, so they're not gonna follow a gun law. They still gonna find an illegal gun. But the odd thing about it is a lot of the mass shootings in this country were with perfectly legal guns that person or that person's parents owned.
But that's because certain people are entitled to getting those kind of guns. Everybody's entitled to getting those guns. And I recently just had there was an incident where I knew that somebody was like, this person is dangerous. This person is not, mentally sound, or they mentally should not be carrying a gun. And guess what? They have access. And so another way all this stuff from happening is making people accountable. I don't care if they're black. I don't care if they're white. I don't care if they're Asian, Hispanic, whatever. Making everybody accountable. If Holden had a manifesto, the last 2-3 people he talked to for the last few weeks, guarantee you he ain't do this all by himself. Investigate them too. See who else is behind it. See who else knew. The dude that shot up Buffalo, somebody else knew that he was going to do that. Why was that person not responsible too? So you start holding everybody's feet to the fire, people going to start recoiling.